But first, I'm going to start off with just telling you a little bit about me. So, my name is Katie Biron. I have been a foster parent, a licensed foster parent here in Washington State, off and on for the past 15 years. When we first got licensed, it was because our agency, we were working with Amara at the time, required anyone who was interested in adoption to get licensed. And so we went through the foster parent training, and I will tell you, Katie of 15 years ago was super different than Katie of today. I went to those classes hoping for a legally free newborn. And you guys can all laugh at me because I know how ridiculous that is now, but that's really what brought us into the foster care system. And so we got licensed, and way back in the olden days, 15 years ago, there was not a lot of talk about trauma. There were no parent allies presenting in our classes. It was just a lot of what I took away from it. And this is a lens from 15 years ago, was really save the child. And you can't make them your own, really, because these people out there still have some rights. Like, you have to ask them if you can get their hair cut and stuff. But what these kids really need are replacement parents, is what I heard. And for a multitude of reasons, I was really afraid of doing foster care. I didn't understand it. And so we sat empty for 18 months. We had our license open, but we were really looking to adopt. And so we just sat empty. And looking back on that, my husband and I both feel bad and wish we could go back in time and talk to ourselves, because I was a pediatric nurse, still am. He had a good job. We had extra bedrooms, and we could have really been a great support to families and really help some parents, reunite with their kids and get back on a track that supports their family. But that's not why we were there. We were there to adopt a baby. And so we ended up getting matched to a mom in another state. And this mom was looking to place her baby for adoption. And the reason she was looking to place her baby for adoption is that she had been previously involved with the child welfare system in her state and had 5 previous children removed. Some were with relatives, some had been foster adopted into closed adoptions, and she had no idea where they were. So when she found herself pregnant again, she decided to make an adoption plan so that she could at least know who had her baby, and hopefully build enough of an open adoption that this baby would know that she loved this baby so much. And so we had started to get glimpses from Amara of the importance of open adoption and a little tiny bit about why kids need connection, but it wasn't much. But here we get a call, baby's on its way, we jump on a plane, we go out there, and I'm like, I got my hero cape on. I'm like, look at me, I'm going to be Susie, so open. I'm going to do this adoption thing right. We're going to have, if anybody remembers the movie way back when, Immediate Family. It's a story of an adoption where they have this totally open adoption, and mom comes to live with them, and they just sit around singing old songs. And so I was like, that's what we're going to do. This is going to be awesome. And I came into that room with preconceived notions and thoughts about what was going to happen. And what hit me in the face as soon as I walked in this room was there was a person who was hurting. And my greatest joy was coming from her greatest sadness. Me becoming a mom was because she wasn't going to parent this one. And it kind of like left me reeling. I'm like, everything I thought, everything I imagined, that wasn't the reality. This was a woman who was hurting so deeply that she was making this decision in the hopes that she would at least know a little bit about where this child ended up. And so the baby ended up getting placed with us. And I remember we had agreed to letters and pictures once a year until the child was 18. And one of the things the mom said to us is, I really wish my mom could know this baby, but she is too sick to come to the hospital. And so I'm very sad she'll never see this baby. And I had this moment and I was like, wow, I can either continue to walk the path and stick to letters and pictures, or I can go way out of my comfort zone. Talked to my husband and we went way out of our comfort zone. And I said, well, what if we come to your house? She lived with her mom, so your mom can meet this baby. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea if this was a good idea, a bad idea. I didn't know, but what I could tell you is I had been a mom at this point for about 72 hours. And I could recognize another mom hurting. And I wanted to do something different. So we went to her house. We met grandma. Grandma cried the entire time. We met great-great-grandmother, who was this amazing matriarch of this family. And then we actually met one of my daughter's siblings was there on a visit that day. And I will forever be grateful we did that, because grandma passed away a month later. And so had we not done that, indeed, she would not have known this baby. So we came home and I, started writing these letters and sending pictures. I was completely enamored with this little one. And I was really disappointed because every time I wrote, nothing came back. And I would write all this stuff about this amazing little girl and nothing came back. And when she was about, I don't know, 2 years old. So I've kept sending letters and pictures all this time. They're just, no response. I was like, I'm kind of tired of this. I thought we were having this open relationship. I thought we were doing instant immediate family. I thought we were going to be singing Leonard Skinner songs together. And that's not what this looks like. And I was like, maybe I'm done. And then because I'm a rule follower, I was like, well, I said I'd do it till she's 18. So I'm going to send a letter and picture until she's 18. And then I had this another transformational moment when my kid was 5 and we moved communities here in Washington. And so this was, my child lost her, she didn't lose. We changed homes, but that was the only home she'd ever known. She lost her little preschool community and she had a really hard time. And I remember her screaming at me, I miss my mom. I miss my mom. And I remember thinking, how could you miss her? Like, you only knew her for 72 hours and you haven't seen her in 5 years. And I didn't say those things to my kid, though. That was all in my head. But I was smart enough to call an adoption competent therapist. And I was like, what's going on? Why does my kid say this? And that's when I learned about the primal wound and that there's no such thing as a blank slate, that kids have formed memories and bonds while they're in utero, and that those stay with them. And when that is severed through the process of being placed in a foster home or through adoption, that child is grieving that loss. That parent is grieving that loss. And it was another like impactful moment. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do what I can to facilitate this connection as best I can, because I've got to look my kid in the face someday. And if she says, what did you do to try and find my mom? Or what did you do to stay in contact with her? I wanted to be able to say, I did this, I sent these letters, I did this, I did this. So I kept building this relationship. And I remember we got a card at Halloween when she was 6. Her mom had sent her a card. This is the first time I've heard from her since we left her house, way back when my little one was 72 hours old. And she said some stuff to my kid, and then she was like, please give me a call. And I was so scared. I was like, oh my gosh, now we got to build this relationship. We've had 6 years. What's this look like? And so I hemmed and hawed it for 2 weeks. And by the time I picked up that phone and made that phone call, the phone number was disconnected. And so I continued to just work on building that connection however I could with my daughter. And by that time, we ended up having 2 additional children. We gave birth to, and then when my daughter was 7, her mom called me up and she said, I'm really doing well. How are you doing? Will you let me have connection? And here we're 7 years with no connection whatsoever. And so again, I'm like, what am I going to do? I could say, we're going to stick to letters and pictures until she's 18. And when she's 18, you can figure this out. Or I can build this connection for my kid. And so we decided to build the connection for our kid, jumped on an airplane, flew all 5 of us out there, met with mom. My daughter got to hang out with her mom. We saw some of her siblings and really just fueled that connection for her. And when we got back, I had been working as a pediatric nurse, and then as we had additional kids, I quit. And after seeing that bond my kid had with her mom, with her siblings, how important that was, how impactful that was to her, and how guilty I felt for failing at being a foster parent way back when. Oh, you need me to turn up the volume. Yes, thank you, thank you. My computer often thinks I talk too loud, so it manually hushes me. So thank you for letting me know that you would like me louder, because my computer really likes to make me quiet. Okay, so we come back and we get licensed to be foster parents. And this time, darn it, I'm going to do it right. I am going to reunite families. I did not go with any agency, or we did not go with any agency to get licensed because I didn't want to adopt. I didn't want to expand our family. I wanted to help kids get home. And so we got licensed through the state, and I said, give me those kids that are going to go home. Give me those parents who are struggling and need a cheerleader, because in all this time also of getting to know my daughter's mom, I saw how the lack of connection, the lack of relationship, not knowing where her kids were, if they were okay, were they safe, was affecting her, and how it had really perpetuated a belief that she didn't deserve to be a parent, and that, you know, she couldn't succeed at this. And so it had very, very much just caused a cycle that was very unfortunate. And so we got licensed, and they placed us with a little baby, and I was on the spot. I was like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to build connection? Let's go social worker. And the social worker was like, yep, I'm a CPS social worker. I've got 100 things to do. We'll get to that. And I'm like, okay. So at about 3 weeks in, I've got this little baby. He hasn't seen his mom. And I'm like, hey, social worker. I think his mom's supposed to get a visit. Can his mom have a visit? And she was like, I've got a lot on my plate. I cannot facilitate a visit, but I've got this uncle. This kid's uncle is blowing up my phone on the other side wanting to do a visit. So if you're so like into doing this visit, I'm going to give you his phone number and you guys set it up. And I was like, oh, whoa, now that is scary. You want me to cold call this person whose baby is in my care because something went on? I mean, he's the uncle, not the parent. And I'm supposed to just go visit them? And again, here's another turning point. What do? Do I say, no, that's not what I signed up for. I did not sign up to supervise visits or do visits by myself. Or do I put my money where my mouth is? And I was like, okay. So I called up the uncle, and he was like, I am so glad to hear from you. We have no idea where my little nephew is. His mom is having a very hard time not knowing where her baby is. She's still pumping. And is he getting his milk? What is going on? And I was like, hey, so let's set up a visit. And I'm racking my brain. Where on earth do you set up a visit? Like, with the context of foster care. And so I'm like, hey, Starbucks to the rescue. Let's meet up at Target Starbucks. And so I remember parking in the parking lot. And at this time, I had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a newborn. So I pile them all in the cart. Little girls are hanging on the side. Babies are in their little baby seats at the cart. And I remember thinking as I walked in, this is either the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life or one of the smartest. And I walked in. I saw this lady who reached for this baby. I saw this uncle who gave me a hug. And I saw that they were just people, just like my daughter's mom. These were just hurting people. And I handed that little baby over to his mom, and it, it was a wonderful moment. They were so grateful that I had made the effort to make that visit happen. And it just really set our relationship up on a good path. And so a couple months later, it was Christmas, and having been a mom of 3 kids by now, I was like, babies need to spend their first Christmas with their mom. Moms need to have their babies for their first Christmas. And so again, I'm calling the social worker, who's probably like rolling her eyes and is like, oh dear Lord, why is this woman a foster parent? And I'm like, hey, is there any way this baby could go home for Christmas? And they're like, no, your baby's not being reunited for Christmas. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get that. But could we figure out a way to do a visit so she can have her baby at Christmas? And fortunately, the social worker enjoyed my crazy idea, and we set up that the uncle would stay and supervise the entire 24-hour visit. We met each other in a parking lot, and I gave them their baby and some little hand and foot ornaments I had made and a little baby's first Christmas outfit. And she got to spend Christmas with her little baby. And it's all these little moments that have really, really changed who I am, changed how I came to this work. So fast forward, I have a good relationship with mom. Mom and I are texting. If we need to go, if we're planning a family trip, I would text her and be like, we're going out of town for 2 weeks. Here's our options. I can either put this little one in respite, but that's going to be with a set of foster parents that he doesn't know. And by now he's like 9, 10 months old, so kind of into his routines and very much in stranger danger. Or if it's okay, we could take him with us. I'll text you pictures while we're on the trip. And then when you get back, or we get back, we'll make up a couple visits. And mom was like, of course, take him on a trip. I love to see pictures and I look forward to making up some visits. And so I would watch in foster parent communities this adversarial relationship over something as simple as taking a trip. And I'm like, wow, I didn't realize it was supposed to be so hard, because it wasn't hard. And then our little one had his first birthday, and mom's visits were on a Tuesday and a Thursday. And apparently you guys are now sensing holidays are a big deal to me. So I was like, his mom needs to see him on his first birthday. And so again, I tell the social worker, I'm like, hey, I'm going to meet up with her at the mall. If this isn't okay with you, let me know. But otherwise, we're going to go do this. And so we met up at a mall, bought some cupcakes. She got to watch her baby blow out his little candle. Hypothetically, we didn't light fire with the baby. And she spent his first birthday. And then let's fast forward a little bit more to when he's about 15, 16 months. And mom and I had gotten to be really good friends. We freaked everyone out at court. We would sit at court together in the hallway on those long pews in King County. And we would just sit and chat, and nobody knew what to do with us. They're like, why are they talking to each other? Do we let them talk to each other? What do we do about this? And we were just like, I don't know. We're just bored. We sit here forever waiting for the case to be called, and we're just going to talk to each other. And then when he was about 15 months old, mom came to us and said, I've made some decisions, and I would like you to be his legal parents. And I still definitely want to be his mom and in his life, but I'd like you to become his legal parents. And I was like, wow, this is a big shift from what I had planned. But I loved this lady, and I had gotten to know this lady and this whole family so much. And together, as our new family, the family decided, his mom, his uncle, that he was going to stay with us, but that this was just expanding his family. And so today he's 7. He just had a birthday, please excuse me, but there are 4 of them. Keeping track of their birthdays is a little hard. He's 7. He has 2 moms. He loves his moms. His mom is successfully parenting his little sister. And just this morning, we had a big conversation about why he's so short. And I'm like, dude, your mom's short. You got your short genes from her. And he's like, yeah, okay. But so today we continue to have very, very open relationships. And I think sometimes when people think about relationships and ongoing relationships after a child's been returned home, you think it's all just one way, foster parents supporting the parents. But I will tell you, I have had numerous medical issues this year, and his family, our family, they're the only ones local to us. And I cannot tell you, his aunts has sent multiple boxes of Costco goodies have just shown up at our doorstep. That uncle that I talked about came and stayed with us for a week to wrangle kids while I recovered. His mom has come out here and just helped. So it's not just this one way where I'm still helping the struggling family. We just redefined family. And they have stepped up this year in a way that absolutely just like rocks my world sometimes, to think about giving up a week of your life to come wrangle kids or sending Costco goodies. But that's what can happen when you build these relationships. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. It's hard and it's scary, and there's a lot of fear on all sides, and you're navigating these new relationships, and then you're throwing in child welfare and this system that none of us really understood that well. I didn't understand what services were or what a safety plan was or any of that, but we understood that we both loved this kid, and we understood that we were both pretty important to this little dude. And so together we kind of just redefined family. So before I transition into my next phase, I wanted to see if anybody had any questions for me, comments. Anybody need a coffee refill? Staring at a boxes of blackness. Turn on your camera, say hi.
So how many children do you have?
I have 4 children. I have, my oldest is now 13. I have an 11-year-old. I have an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old.
And then I was curious about another thing too. You said respite foster care. How often is that needed? How long is the average respite? Is it sometimes just for the day or for a week, or how does that go?
Yes, absolutely. So to count as respite, it has to be overnight. And so often you'll see it for a couple days up to a maximum of 2 weeks. Anything over 2 weeks requires special approval. But it can happen for a variety of reasons. I have some feelings about respite, but I will keep them right here, right now, because we're not here to talk about respite. But if a family is going on vacation and for whatever reason that foster youth cannot attend with them, then the child's option is to go into respite with another licensed foster parent. And so sometimes you can find one, often the department finds someone and you're just dropping the child off with someone the child doesn't know. Sometimes, particularly in adversarial relationships, parents will not consent to travel for the child, and so then respite is found. Let's see, I'm trying to read the chat too. Was I worried about exposing my family to safety issues? Absolutely. I tell you, walking into Target, I had no idea how that was going to turn out. That could have been great, or that could have been really awful, but I was in Target, probably pretty safe, I think. I don't know. I was absolutely worried, but I tried to set up situations that felt safer to me. So that first meeting was at Target with lots of other people in the middle of the day. The time I met for his birthday, we did it in a mall full of folks, and we could leave at separate times and we could just show up. And so I didn't have significant fear once I got to meet mom that this mom would follow me or anything. But it took a long time. I didn't like share our address that first day. It took we built a relationship, and then as I got to know the family, as they got to know me, we started opening our doors. This uncle and I stayed in contact a lot, and he would come out and visit. And so I'm trying to think the first time I had them over for my house. I think it must have been his second birthday, because I remember his aunts and his uncles and his mom being there. So it must have been when he was 2. But I was absolutely worried. I had no idea what I was doing. But I also saw this mom and this family who loved this kid and were so much more than it had been on that chipper when I got it. If you understood what happened that day, what had happened those months, it wasn't people who woke up one day and said, you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to be involved with CPS today. So I'm going to do some things that'll get us there. No, these were humans with human circumstances. But yeah, I was scared. I was scared walking into my daughter's mom's house. Holy mackerel. I am walking into a stranger's house whose baby I just agreed to parent forever. I had no idea what was waiting for me there, but I did it. Kathy says, if everyone treated the folks that come into our lives the way you do, this world would be a much better place. Thank you, Kathy. That is so sweet. I agree. Am I still fostering? I am not still fostering. We did for 6 years, I think, and then kind of got to a point where we had taken care of, I think we had 14 or 15 kids. And my sweet spot is babies. I love babies. I'm a pediatric nurse. My husband's sweet spot is not babies. And he was pretty excited for little ones to grow up and walk on their own and not need diapers and stuff. And I also became really passionate about, this is actually a great segue to my next thing, about building these relationships. So I was cultivating these relationships with other families whose kids I was caring for. And then I was also conversely watching these foster parent communities where every interaction was so adversarial, and it was like this win or lose, and one of them was going to win the kid and one was going to lose the kid, and everybody was coming out the other end with an absolute ton of trauma. And if a kid went home, it was considered a loss, and then that foster family would turn around and quit. And I was watching good foster families leave, and I'm like, whoa, that was not my experience. Can we do this differently? And so I kind of set out on a path to do this differently. Were all my relationships this positive and affirming? I would say not as many, not all were as much of a family, but I always could work with the parents. Some parents, it's like any relationship. Some folks you just gel with. Others, it's not like as much gelling, but you can like work together as a team to support the kids. And so I just would always try to put on a lens of what privilege do I have, and how can I utilize that privilege to meet the other person where they're at. And so obviously I'm super big on parents seeing their kids on their kid's birthday. And so instead of being like, we'll be at this McDonald's, I would look and I'm like, I have transportation, she doesn't. I'll drive the hour and 20 minutes down to where she lives, and we can meet 3 blocks from her house. Because I have a car, I have gas. Why do I need to make her jump through hoops? Let's see if we can make this happen easier. But definitely not all were that way, but we all got along. Like we all would be on the same team. We were team kid. So I see your question, Alice. I'm going to jump into it. So that brings me to kind of my mission. So I'm standing there. I've had these great relationships, and conversely, I realized how special my son's mom was, and my daughter's mom was, and these other moms I had worked with. And I realized like caregivers have a lot of power. Like I could have Had I not had a relationship with her and put up barriers and been frustrated at what she was sending to visits or what she was dressing her baby in or a variety of things, if this adversarial relationship had bloomed and grown and kind of taken over our whole encounter, that wasn't best for him in any way, shape, or form. And so there was a committee. Someone said, do you want to be a chairperson of a committee? I was kind of like trying to figure my way back into the workforce after being a stay-at-home mom for a while. I was like, sure, love to chair a committee. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I was like, I'm going to ask a bunch of cool people that I know to be on my committee. So I was like, hey, friends, all in child welfare, not random neighbors, come be on my committee. And we decided to tackle this problem of connections. And I was like, we have got to figure out a better way to do this. Because first of all, it shouldn't have taken me 10 years to get here, because that's an awful long time. And we got to do better. And so this committee and I built out this program. We looked at icebreakers and we're like, that's a cool idea. Getting people face to face, letting them talk about the kids, that's a good idea. But we went around and talked to folks all over Washington. What we heard from social workers is our plates are pretty full. We're constantly putting out fires, getting two people to meet at Target at a coffee shop to get to know one of each other. Super nice idea, not a fire. And so we looked and I was like, let's take Katie way back when. 14 years ago, Katie, not interested in partnering with a parent, just wants a baby. What would have changed her? And I said, if someone had called me and been like, hey, I know partnering with parents sounds scary. I know we're asking you to form relationships in the child welfare system, and that's scary. But let me tell you a little bit about my experience. Let me tell you why you should put in this work. And I'll be there with you. I'll go with you to Target, and I'll sit with you at that table when you're making awkward conversation with a parent for the first time. And then I'll be there afterwards to support you. And then I said, wow, that is a good idea. But the parents, they need support too. And so by then I had met a bunch of really cool parent allies, just rock stars in this field. And I was like, whoa, if we could get a parent ally and a caregiver mentor to support this relationship, I'll bet magic would happen. And so I created a program, dreamed it up, designed it to help Katie of 14 years ago. And that's exactly what the Family Connections program is. So when folks participate in the program, we assign them a caregiver mentor and a parent ally, and those people work together to really build those supportive relationships around kids and really getting everyone, you don't have to be best friends. I tell people to think of it like your in-laws. You don't get to pick them. They may not be people you would hang out with. They may not even be people you would be friends with. You might even have a lot of stuff not in common, but you both love the same person. So you figure it out. And maybe that means at Thanksgiving, you don't bring up politics. Maybe that means you both feel all kinds of different ways about religion, and that's a non-topic that you talk about. But you come together because you love the same person. And that's how I want folks to look at partnering between parents and caregivers, is find some common ground, give grace and space, drill down on what do you have in common, and realize it can look really different for everyone. So we assign folks to a mentor, and the mentor calls them and is like, hey, what do you think about forming a relationship with this parent? Or would you like to meet the people who are caring for your kid? And most of the time parents are like, yeah, I would like to know who's taking care of my kid, because what parent is like, oh, I absolutely love knowing not a thing about who has my kids, where they live, are they okay? I'm reading these stories about these horrifying things on national media where someone adopted a kid and didn't take care of them. What if that's my kid? Is my kid okay? And so most of the time parents are like, yeah, I'd love to know a little bit about who has my kid? And then we contact the caregiver, and caregivers, it really depends. I can get some that are fresh out of training, have really been trained in the new trainings of partnering with parents, co-parenting, and they are like, yeah, let's do it. And then I can get some who they took Pride with Katie 15 years ago. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so we really meet folks where they're at. So would you be comfortable with a face-to-face? We now do Zoom meeting. No? Okay. What about, would it feel okay to you to maybe write down a little bit to just let the parent know who has their kids? And we'll guide you and help you figure out. I'm not asking you to write down your address, but I am asking you to describe where you live. Do you live in a neighborhood full of kids? Kids are always out playing. There's a little wooded trail down the street. Let's just tell parents a little bit about who has their kid and just recognize each other's value in caring for this child. And so we really support that interaction, do a lot of teaching around that interaction, and walk with folks. And sometimes we have one meeting, everybody's great, they go on to build their own relationships. Other times it's bumpier, and we're there afterwards too to support. And so this is really built on what I needed to get to where I am today a little bit faster. And so the Family Connections program was introduced to the legislature in 2020. And I had never done anything political at all, not at all. But I ended up having a meeting with someone who works on policy, Lori Lippold, and she was like, let's take this to the legislature. And I'm like, no, let's not. And she's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, no, I don't do that. That's not me. And she convinced me it was a good idea. So I went down and talked to legislatures, and I'm like, guess what? Kids do better when the adults in their lives get along. Kids do worse when they feel caught between two people or four people, and they feel like they have to choose sides, and they can sense this adversarial relationship. And so every lawmaker I talked to was like, yeah, you're right. So it got passed into law and fully funded in 2020. And I was like, holy moly, what am I doing here? I got a bill passed. I have no idea still what I'm doing. We got fully funded, and then COVID hit and our funding got. So we have spent the last year building partnerships, still believing in this work. We got included in a couple grants. So that's going to help you understand why our rollout's a bit sporadic on the outside, it looks like. So right now we are in King County Family Treatment Court and Mason County Family Reunification Court. We will soon be in Grays Harbor Family Treatment Court, as well as the Lakewood office in Pierce County. Our funding did get restored this year. So very soon we will also be expanding to serve all of Clark County and all of Yakima County. And there is a plan to have this program statewide by 2025. So that is the program in a nutshell. And I'm going to stop again for questions and to take a drink. All right, so what can you do? What can you do to help build these relationships? What can you do to help see these positive outcomes when folks can build partnerships? Because I will tell you, long after the child welfare system is out of the picture, when we have cultivated those relationships, those can be lifelong relationships. No matter what the style no matter what the outcome for permanency was. And if you have a situation where those relationships weren't cultivated and perhaps a permanency outcome is adoption, well, you end up with situations a lot like my older daughter's siblings. no contact, or maybe the contact is so structured. I have a lot of feelings. You guys asked me to talk about all this stuff, but I have a lot of feelings about open adoption agreements because I think often open adoption agreements are very, very heavily weighted to make it tricky for parents to weed through them. There's a lot of, if you do this, followed by this, then this, then this, and this, and this, and I, as the adopted parents, decide it's in the child's best interest, then you can see this kid. And I think the more we're listening to the voices of adoptees and former foster youth, we are understanding that kids crave that connection and that kids want that connection with their first families. And so while again, it's scary and it's hard and it's taken a lot of figuring out, if we can support that connection whenever possible, our kids aren't as tempted to do it behind our back. They do it with us. And that, I mean, I'm telling you, there is still stuff in their families and their stories that is tough to navigate. It's hard for me to navigate, but I would much rather do that alongside my kid than have my kid doing it behind my back because she doesn't think that I can handle her talking about having two moms or talking about missing that mom or wishing she could have been part of that sibling group. And so I really encourage adoptive parents to kind of do that work to understand their kids do have two families. And that is part of our kids. And if we're not comfortable that our kids have two moms or two dads, then that's some work we need to do within ourselves. We can't put that on our kids because being an adoptee is tough enough, forming an identity. Any plans for any plans for Kittitas County? There are plans for everywhere across the state. And so we are doing the sites we're doing now, and then we're going to go back to the legislature and say, we're awesome, look what we're doing, give us more money. And so once we get that money, we absolutely have plans for every county because it's almost a no-brainer. When people work together and can support kids, outcomes are better for everybody. And when we just say, go forth and build relationships, it's a little ambiguous and folks need a little bit more structure and a little bit more support and a little bit more hand holding because there's a whole lot of how exactly do you do that? And so we can do the why, but the how can be much more nuanced. Would you be open to direct requests from causes outside your stated areas? I can see where this would be beneficial for all parents and caregivers. Absolutely. I may not be able to assign mentors to those cases, but I can absolutely give you resources to share. I can talk you through some ideas I might have. Absolutely, give me a call. I'm happy to come and do trainings on why connections matter, what the impact of having good connections is to our kids who are in care. Yeah, I can talk about connections on the spectrum. And so I'm actually going to show you guys where to find all these resources because I work pretty hard to make a central place for you all to find these. And so I'm going to share my screen. Share. Sure. All right, can you all see the Family Connections Program website? Yeah, all right, thank you, Ryan. Okay, so this is www.fcpwa.org. Family Connections Program Washington is kind of what that stands for. This is our landing page. And so this tells a little bit about what we do. So if you're like, oh, dude, I remember that Katie lady coming and talking something about connection, something or others, come here and you'll find out. So here we talk about what we can do, in-person meetings, virtual meetings, paper meetings, supporting these relationships. You can click here if you're in one of the selected areas that we are now. And we can get somebody in the program. Program is completely voluntary. Folks have to want to be there. I cannot force a relationship and hope that it'll be successful. So if people aren't bought in, it's okay. It's okay. It's also not a one and done. So maybe a parent is feeling really overwhelmed and traumatized. Their kids just got removed, and they're like, no, I don't want anything to do with that person who's caring for my kids. But 6 months later, they're like, yeah, now I kind of would like to do that. We can absolutely have a meeting later. We can have a meeting when a child is changing caregivers and do caregiver to caregiver. We can do a meeting when a child is returning home and has been out of the parent's care for a number of years. And we really want to get the parents set up to have a successful transition into parenting their kids, instead of just like, hey, knock, knock, here's your kid, here's all their bags, and good luck, and we hope you are successful. So we can have meetings at any time. So what I want to show you all right now is this little handy relationship building tips and tools. And so I work to keep this as up to date as possible. So if you're talking to a caregiver for the first time, if you're like, man, I wish there was a video I could show somebody, come here. This new podcast, if you have not listened to, seen, and heard, it's from the Institute for Family. And I'm just going to warn you, I was listening to episode 3 in the car the other day on the way home, and I ended up completely missing my exit. I was so engrossed. This is some seriously amazing parents telling their stories, telling how that when someone saw them, when someone heard them, when someone asked what happened to you instead of what is wrong with you, what happened. And some of these folks you might have met, Sharonda Sullivanoff, Elise Morrissey was episode 3 that made me not miss my exit. But sharing this podcast with folks and getting folks to listen to parents' voices will just, it rocks my world. And I know these people and I work with these people. We have 2 Family Connections videos. This is Yuvia's story right here. Yuvia is a teen who experienced foster care, and her mom and her foster mom built a relationship and really partnered together. And she talks about the impact even after she went home on, she just calls it family. I remember one line in there, she's like, when I see everybody around the dinner table, I just think family, family, family. If you want to meet my son's mom and that awesome uncle back there, this is a video that was made about our family and kind of what it looks like for our family. We also have a video discussion guide. And so if you want to get a bunch of your best child welfare friends together in a room and talk about how to build these relationships and what can you do in your sphere, this discussion guide will walk you through a whole slew more questions than you'll ever want to get through. And then these are from the Birth and Foster Parent Partnership, which is a national movement. And this movement is really to bring together parents and foster parents who are focused on doing this work, who are building the relationships on a national level. And so they put together some tools, and I threw these up here because these are kind of handy. So this is like, you have a foster parent who's just slightly, maybe kind of a little bit interested. This handout's really great. It kind of talks about how do you build that relationship, and then has this handy dandy checklist of a bunch of ideas. So things like, do you have any ideas on how I can help your child tonight? Or does your child have a bedtime routine that might be helpful? Or, okay, get ready, showstopper, how are you doing? Questions like this can mean so much. And over here we have things that a parent might want to ask a foster parent. And the cool thing is the Child's Trust Fund Alliance put together 4 of these. So you have them for, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so I can see you all. You have them for building the relationship, for maintaining the relationship, for what the relationship looks like when the child's going home. What does that look like to continue a relationship after the child's been home? I am having 99 problems with my Zoom. There we go. All right, so in our last 6 minutes, wow, Katie talked a lot. Sorry about that. My kids say I talk a lot, and it appears to be true. See, this is why my computer mutes me. So I'm going to ask you all, if you can, to turn on your cameras, and I want to hear from you. What changes can you make in your sphere in order to see more of these connections happening? What are you going to take from this talk or from this moment and implement in your own practice? Because obviously I really believe in this. I believe that this can make a huge difference, that we will see things change if we can prioritize relationships at our center. So I just wanted to hear from all of you now. I'm going to stop talking myself and let you guys talk. Pam, it looks like you're on mute, Pam.
Thank you. I've loved your talk. And the other thing is I'm going to try to get to know my birth mothers better, and just listen to them. I've had some very challenging cases with some of my birth moms. And so I right now have a really big one going on. So I just need to know more what she would like. And because I'm pretty sure I know what the foster mom was. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. You are so welcome. I highly recommend that Seen and Heard podcast, episode 3. If you don't know Elise, she talks about being a mom in jail, and people have a really hard time looking beyond that, and just hearing her talk about the impact of someone coming in and being like, how are you doing? Just, it blew me away.
They just want to be treated like a regular person, just no job.
Yes.
And no
value.
Yes. I understand.
Yeah. Anybody else? My friend Jacob's in here. I see him.
Mine's kind of the opposite. I had a problem, not what I learned from today, but I've been wanting to kind of ask how to deal with the birth mom. She tells me she's gone all this that she's gone through, and she's had loss, death in her family. And I tell her, I think you're really a strong person. And she goes, I'm tired of people telling me how strong I am. And that's like my thing, that I want to feel that I'm strong with, physical limitations that I have. So I think that's something I could tell the birth mom, you're so strong to go through this, but she doesn't want to hear it. And I try to focus on positive, like, you've got these services, and that's just like more work for them. So I appreciate everything you are offering today so much. And also the resources are really important. I'm pretty new. I just got sworn in as a guardian ad litem a year ago, December. So I'm still pretty new, just have had one kiddo that I was guardian ad litem for. So I really appreciate all of your insight.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
I'm still taking it in.
Does anyone have any ideas for Jan? How have others successfully engaged a parent?
Excuse me, I have a mother also that is in prison in one of my cases, and she and the kin that have her child do not communicate well at all. So as the advocate for him, I send the mom pictures of him that I get from the kin. I will send pictures just to let her know how he is doing. So she appreciates that very much.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carrie. Mary, I think you had your hand up.
Hi. Yeah, not about prison, but I've been a advocate for over 10 years now. And at first we definitely didn't have much contact between the foster parents and the birth parents. And it's been, I think, just a really beneficial thing. And I guess the thing I am saying more and more to the birth parent is that when that child comes home, this can be a resource for you. And I just recently, I have a case where the mom has her children returned and she got COVID. And she wound up calling the foster parent who came over and took the kids to her house for a few days. And, you know, otherwise, because so many of our parents just don't have good resources, their own families just aren't people that want to help or they can be trusted to help. So sometimes that's maybe the only resource they have is that foster parent. And I think it also helps the foster parent with the separation that they're feeling when they lose contact with that kid that they've raised and loved for a few years.
Absolutely. It feels so different having experienced both, from having a child leave and you have not a clue how the child's doing or are they safe. I can very much empathize with what that must feel like for a parent who's lost their children, because it racked me and stayed with me and I couldn't move through the grief process. Conversely, when I know where a kid is and I still see them and they can come hang out and I turn into Auntie Katie, I love being Auntie Katie because Auntie Katie can kind of turn into that grandma role and spoil them and then send them home. Somebody else can wake up all night. But it looks like we are over time. And I just wanted to also invite you all, I'm going to ask Ryan to send out a link to the Building Family Partnerships convening. There's been a couple of us who have spent the last 2 years going around the state listening to folks and asking, what are the barriers? What do we need to build these relationships? How can we put these at the center? And so we are going to present our findings from a series of 5 listening sessions around the state, and then make some recommendations to leadership and listen to them respond. So I was going to try and quickly put the link in, but given time, I'm going to ask Ryan to send it out to y'all. So feel free to contact me anytime. If you have a resource, you're like, put this up on your page, awesome. And I just thank you all for joining me here today and look forward to continuing the conversation. And here, Ryan, I'll even do your plug. Please fill out the evaluation that Ryan so kindly put in the chat. We appreciate it. I do like to know. Oh, my contact info. Yeah, I will actually do that. And I recommend everybody check out that video because my son, he's really cute. All right, Ryan, I think I'll turn it back to you.
Well, I just spent time trying to find your link. So there.
Awesome. Thank you. There's my link. Building Family Partnerships. Please register. It'll be more. We'll learn more.